My wife cheated on me using 3 dating apps, searching for richer men. But when I found her secret upgrade documents and divorce strategy planning, I exposed her with a projector in front of all her family and friends. They never expected what they saw. I'm 34 years old. I'm a mechanical engineer. And about 6 months ago, my life went to shit in a way that I still have trouble processing. But I need to tell it because, honestly, it's one of those stories that seems like it's from a bad movie, but it happened to me. I married Jessica 5 years ago, when I was 29 and she was 27. And for a long time, I thought we were happy. You know, that kind of quiet happiness where nothing spectacular happens, but nothing bad either. Just two people building a life together. I worked at a pretty large engineering firm, made good money, like 95,000 a year plus bonuses, and she was a freelance graphic designer. Although the truth is her income was pretty irregular, like $1,000 one month and then nothing for 3 months. So basically I covered all the important bills, while she paid for some minor things when she had work. It wasn't something that bothered me at first. I mean, when you get married, you assume it's a team and everyone contributes what they can, right? Jessica took care of decorating the house, organizing outings with friends, keeping our social life active, and I took care of the practical stuff, the bills, car maintenance, house repairs, all that boring but necessary shit. We lived in a house that I bought before we got married. A nice place in a quiet neighborhood, nothing ostentatious but comfortable, with 3 bedrooms and a small yard that I never had time to take care of properly. Jessica had her office in one of the extra bedrooms where she supposedly worked, although looking back I realized she spent more time on social media than designing. But well, I discovered that later. The first sign that something was wrong came about 8 months ago, during a dinner we hosted at home for some friends. Jessica invited her best friend, Karen, and 2 other girls she hung out with often, Michelle and Ashley. And I was in the kitchen preparing more drinks when I heard them talking in the living room. It sighed. Wasn't my intention to spy, seriously, but Karen was talking loud, like she does when she drinks wine, and she said something like, "When you find someone who really appreciates everything you do, you'll see what's good." And Jessica laughed and responded, "Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I think I could do an upgrade. You know, someone more ambitious, more exciting." I just stood there with the pitcher of margaritas in my hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach, but I told myself it was just girlfriend gossip, you know? That kind of silly conversation they have after 2 glasses of wine. When I went back to the living room, I acted like nothing happened. Sat down next to Jessica and followed the conversation about some Netflix series they were all watching. But the comment kept spinning in my head all night. Later, when everyone left and we were cleaning up, I casually mentioned that I'd heard something from their conversation, and she just looked at me confused and said, "What? Oh, that. It was just a joke. Girl talk. Don't be paranoid," and gave me a kiss on the cheek before going to bed. I wanted to believe her, honestly, because it was easier than accepting that maybe my wife was really thinking about upgrading from me like I was an old cell phone model. The following weeks, I noticed subtle changes that individually didn't mean much, but together started to form a worrying pattern. Jessica was glued to her phone constantly, but when I entered the room, she'd quickly put it away or flip it over so I couldn't see the screen. She started going out more often, supposedly to meetings with clients or to have coffee with friends, but she always came back with a weird smile and happier than normal. She was getting more dressed up, buying new clothes with the credit card I paid for, and suddenly she was very interested in going to the gym, something she didn't give a shit about before. I tried not to be that controlling, jealous type of husband, but something inside me knew something was going on. The real confirmation came about 7 months ago when my best friend Tyler called me on a Tuesday night, like 11 at night, and said, "Bro, I need to tell you something, and I don't know how." And I felt the world stop, because nobody starts a conversation like that if the news is good. Tyler told me he'd seen Jessica at a pretty expensive Italian restaurant downtown, and one of those places I never took her, because honestly I thought they were ridiculous. But she was there with a guy Tyler didn't know, sitting at a corner table, and according to him, it didn't exactly look like a business meeting because they were holding hands across the table. I asked him if he was sure it was her, and he said, "Bro, I've known Jessica for 5 years, of course I'm sure. I even waited outside for like half an hour to confirm it was her before calling you." I didn't sleep that night, obviously. I lay there next to Jessica, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the fuck I'm happening with my life. She was there, sleeping peacefully, like nothing, and I felt a mixture of fury and sadness I'd never experienced before. The next day, I acted normal, went to work like always, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept acting normal for days, being the attentive and providing husband, while inside I was dying to know the truth. The opportunity to discover everything came like 2 weeks later when Jessica went out on a Saturday morning supposedly to a new yoga class she'd found, and she forgot her laptop at home. Normally, I would never check her things. Like, I'm a firm believer that privacy is important even in marriage, but this time something pushed me to do it. I opened the laptop. The password was our anniversary date, because Jessica wasn't very original with those things, and I started checking her browsing history. The first thing I found was that she had active profiles on 3 different dating apps: Bumble, Hinge, and Tinder. 3. And they weren't old profiles from before meeting me, no. The most recent conversations were from literally the day before. I felt like I was going to throw up as I read her messages with different guys. There was one named Brad, with whom she'd agreed to meet Thursday at the usual place. Another named Marcus, to whom she sent photos. Thank God they weren't explicit, but they were suggestive. And like 4 or 5 others she was actively flirting with. In all the profiles it said she was recently single and looking for something serious with someone successful and ambitious. I took screenshots of everything. I don't know why. I guess some rational part of my brain knew I was going to need evidence. But what really destroyed me was when I found a folder in her documents called New Life Planning. Inside was a Word document with a list. And I'm not exaggerating. It was literally a list titled Criteria for the Next One, where she'd written things like minimum income $150K a year, must be, extroverted and fun, no previous children, must live downtown, and other specifications like she was placing an Amazon order. There was another document that was basically a divorce strategy, where she planned how to get as much money as possible from the separation, including notes about how she could claim she contributed to my career emotionally and deserved compensation. I was sitting on the couch with the laptop open when she got back, like 2 hours later. She came in all sweaty with her yoga outfit and her $40 Hydro Flask water bottle that I'd bought her, and she saw me with her laptop, and her face went from post-workout pink to completely white in 2 seconds. I asked her if she had anything to tell me, and she tried to grab the laptop out of my hands while saying, "You have no right to check my things." But I stood up and said, "Really? That's what worries you now?" I showed her the screenshots I'd already sent to my own email and asked her how long she'd been looking, to replace me like I was a job she didn't like anymore. Jessica first tried to deny it, then justify herself saying I was boring and that I never took her anywhere exciting, that all we did was work and watch Netflix, that she needed more in life, that she felt stuck. I reminded her that she lived in my house, ate with my money, drove a car that I paid for, and that while I worked 50 hours a week, she spent her time looking for guys on dating apps. I told her that if she was so unhappy, the door was right there, to go live her exciting life with any of her 150K a year candidates. She started crying and saying it wasn't what I thought, that it was just fantasy, that she'd never done anything physical with anyone. But I didn't believe a word she said anymore. I didn't kick her out of the house that night, mainly because I knew legally I couldn't do it without a formal process, but I also didn't keep acting like her husband. I slept in the guest room, stopped cooking for her, stopped doing anything that wasn't strictly necessary to keep the house running. A guy named Robert, who had like 1,000 positive reviews and charged $400 an hour, but according to everyone, was worth every penny. I liked Robert immediately. He was a guy about 50 years old with gray hair and a very direct attitude. No nonsense. I showed him all the evidence I'd collected and he told me, "This is pure gold, she has no defense here." But then he explained that although I was completely right, the divorce process was going to be complicated because we were in a state where everything gets divided equitably unless you can prove infidelity and damages, which with the digital evidence we could do. He suggested that before serving her the papers, I do some strategic things. First, open a new bank account and move half of our savings so she couldn't empty the accounts. Second, change my direct deposits from work to the new account. Third, reduce her access to credit cards. And fourth, Document absolutely everything. I followed his advice to the letter during the following weeks. Jessica obviously noticed she had less money available and asked me what was going on, and I simply told her we were adjusting the budget because we had important upcoming expenses, which wasn't a lie if you considered that a divorce is definitely an important expense. I also stopped doing all the extra things I always did. I didn't fix the dishwasher when it broke, didn't change the oil in her car, didn't pay for the renewal of her gym membership, basically became the most indifferent roommate in the world. She complained constantly, but I just told her I was very busy with work, that if she needed something, she should do it herself. What Jessica didn't know was that Robert was already preparing the divorce papers, and I was waiting for the perfect moment to serve them. That moment came about 4 months ago, when Jessica proposed, out of nowhere, that we go to a couple's weekend at a lake house that she and her friends had rented with their husbands. I was surprised she invited me, considering we'd spent like 2 months practically not talking beyond what was necessary, but I figured it was part of her strategy to make it seem like everything was fine. I told her yes, I'd go, and she seemed genuinely happy, probably thinking it was going to be an opportunity to fix things or something like that. During the 2 weeks before the trip, Jessica was strangely nice to me, trying to cook some meals, asking about my work, trying to start conversations like nothing had happened. I played along while secretly packing documents and evidence in my briefcase, including printed copies of all her dating profiles, her messages with other guys, and of course, the divorce papers that Robert had prepared with all the necessary legal detail. We arrived at the lake house on a Friday afternoon. It was a really nice place on the outskirts of the city, like 2 hours away, with a private dock and an incredible view. There were Michelle and her husband Jordan, Ashley and her husband Kevin, Karen and her boyfriend Eric, and us. Jessica was in her element, being the perfect social hostess, laughing loudly, serving drinks, organizing stupid couple games, and I just watched thinking how fake that whole act was. The others didn't seem to notice anything weird. Or maybe they did but didn't want to be uncomfortable asking. Honestly, I don't know. Saturday night, after dinner, we were all in the big living room drinking wine, and Jessica suggested we watch photos from our past trips on the big TV. She connected her laptop to the TV and started showing photos from when we went to Cancun last year, from the trip to New York 2 years ago. Happy moments that now seemed completely fake to me. I waited patiently. Let her show, like 3 different albums, while everyone commented on how cute we looked together, and then I stood up and said, "Can I show something?" She looked at me strangely, but handed me the laptop remote. I opened the folder I'd prepared specifically for this moment and started projecting on that giant 75-inch screen the screenshots of Jessica's profiles on dating apps. The room went completely silent as her Tinder photo appeared with the description, "Recently single, looking for adventure." Then I showed some of the conversations. Obviously, I'd selected the most incriminating ones, like the one where she told a guy named Brad, "I can't wait to be free to see you whenever I want," or the one she sent to Marcus where she literally said, "My husband is so boring. I need someone who really knows how to live life." Jessica's face went from shock to absolute horror in a matter of seconds. She tried to stand up, to turn off the TV, but I already had the remote and moved away from her. Karen, her supposed best friend, just stared at the screen with her mouth open. Michelle started saying, "Oh my God," over and over. The men were uncomfortable, like they didn't know where to put themselves. But they kept watching the screen because honestly it was impossible to look away. Then I showed the criteria for the next one document, that ridiculous checklist where I clearly didn't meet the standards of her new dream life. I read some lines out loud. Must earn minimum 150K. David barely reaches 95K. That one was particularly brutal, and several people made sounds of surprise. The room was so quiet you could hear the lake hitting against the dock outside. Jessica was crying at that point, telling me to stop, that this was private, that how dare I humiliate her like this. But I responded, "Humiliate you? Really? Isn't it humiliating that you spent months looking to replace me while living off my money?" Finally, I opened my briefcase and took out the manila envelope with the divorce papers. I handed them to her right, there, in front of everyone, and said, "Consider yourself officially served." She took the envelope with trembling hands and I gathered my things, which I'd already strategically packed in the car, and told everyone, "Sorry to ruin the weekend, but I felt you all deserved to know who you're being friends with." Nobody said anything as I left, except Jessica, who was screaming my name between sobs, but I was already in the car and driving back to the city before she could follow me. The following weeks were absolute chaos. Jessica called like 100 times, sent messages, even showed up at my office once, but security didn't let her up. Her friends, surprisingly, started distancing themselves from her. Michelle sent me a private message apologizing for not having seen the signs, saying that Jessica had been talking badly about me for months and they thought they were just normal marriage complaints. Not that she was literally planning to replace me. Karen, who was supposedly her best friend and had been encouraging all this behavior, became a ghost, didn't even respond to Jessica's messages according to what I found out later. Jessica's family found out about everything because obviously the news spread like fire. Her father called me, a decent guy who'd always treated me well, and told me he was deeply disappointed in his daughter and completely understood my decision. Her sister Kay tried to defend her at first, saying everyone makes mistakes, but when I sent her some of the screenshots, she went quiet. Her cousin Emma, with whom Jessica was super close, was the only one who really turned her back completely, telling her that what she'd done was unforgivable and that she didn't want contact with her for a while. Jessica had to move to a small apartment she got with help from her cousin on the other side. Not Emma, another cousin who I guess felt sorry for her, because with her irregular income she couldn't afford anything decent. The divorce process was surprisingly quick because with all the evidence we had, her lawyer basically advised her to accept the terms that Robert proposed. She got nothing from the house because I'd bought it before the marriage. The savings accounts were divided equitably, which wasn't much after I'd moved the money. She kept her car but had to assume the remaining payments, and I didn't have to pay any kind of alimony because the court considered that her proven infidelity and her active search for another provider showed that she didn't really depend on me emotionally, nor did she plan to in the long term. The whole process officially closed about 2 months ago. The day we signed the final papers at the lawyer's office, Jessica looked completely different from the woman I married. She had dark circles, had lost weight. Her hair didn't have that shine she always maintained with expensive products. She tried to talk to me after signing, told me she was sorry, that she'd been stupid, that she made the worst mistake of her life. But I honestly didn't feel anything. Not anger, not sadness, just relief that this whole nightmare was finally over. 3 weeks ago, I started going to the gym regularly, not to find anyone or anything like that, just to keep myself busy and healthy. I met a woman named Andrea. She's a physical therapist. She's 32 years old, and we've been talking after our workouts. It's nothing serious yet, like we've only had coffee twice, but it's nice to talk to someone who doesn't know all the drama and who treats me like a normal person and not like the guy who was publicly humiliated by his cheating wife. Andrea knows I recently got divorced, but I haven't told her the full details. Maybe someday I will. But for now, it's enough to have simple conversations about movies we've seen or plans for the weekend. The house feels strangely quiet now that I live alone. Sometimes I walk through the rooms and I'm surprised not to hear Jessica talking on the phone or watching her. Reality shows that I hated. I've redecorated a bit. Nothing dramatic, just removed some things she'd put up that I never liked, like those ridiculous decorative pillows on the couch that nobody uses, or the horrible abstract painting in the living room that cost $300. My family has been incredibly supportive. My mom comes to visit me every week and always brings homemade food because she thinks I'm not eating well. Which is partially true because ordering food for one is depressing. I'm not going to lie and say I'm completely fine or that all this didn't affect me, because obviously it affected me. Like, I spent 5 years of my life with someone who turned out to be completely different from who I thought she was. Sometimes I wonder if there were signs I ignored before, if I was naive not to see that she was never really satisfied with me, but then I realized that doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I discovered the truth before losing more years, before having children, with her like we'd planned, before investing even more in a relationship that for her was only temporary until she found something better. Tyler asked me the other day if I regret how I handled everything, especially publicly exposing her at the lake house, and the truth is no, not at all. It was dramatic. Yes, maybe even cruel from a certain perspective, But I feel it was necessary. If I'd just served her the papers privately, she would have controlled the narrative, would have told everyone I was the bad guy, that I treated her badly, that she had reasons to look for someone else. By showing the real evidence of what she was doing, of how calculating she'd been, I made sure the truth was clear from the beginning. Do I care what people think? Honestly, not as much as before anymore. Work has been my salvation during this whole process. Being busy with complex projects has given me something to focus on, besides the disaster of my personal life. My boss, who found out about the situation because obviously I had to explain why I needed so much time off for meetings with lawyers, was super understanding and assigned me to an important new project that has me traveling occasionally to other cities, which is good for clearing my mind. I'm even considering moving to another house, maybe something smaller and more modern downtown. A totally fresh start without any memories of Jessica, although that decision is still up in the air. What surprises me most about all this is how quickly people forgot and moved on with their lives. The friends who were at the lake house now invite me to their gatherings like nothing happened. Some even joke about the incident, calling it the legendary presentation. Ashley told me in confidence that she always thought Jessica was kind of superficial, but never imagined it would go that far. Jordan admitted that several times. He heard Jessica complaining that I didn't make enough money, but he thought she was just venting. It's weird to know that these signs were there all the time, but nobody said anything until everything exploded. Jessica tried to contact me again about a month ago through an unknown number because I'd blocked hers. She sent me a long message saying she'd been in therapy, that she finally understood everything she did wrong, that if I could ever forgive her. I read the message twice and then deleted it without responding. Not because I'm still angry, but because there's simply nothing to say. She made her choices, I made mine, and now we both have to live with the consequences. I don't wish her ill, honestly, but I also don't want to have absolutely anything to do with her ever again. Last night, I was watching a movie in the living room, some action thing with senseless explosions, and I realized that for the first time in months, I hadn't thought about Jessica all day. It was a strange but good feeling, like my brain was finally starting to let go of all that weight. Andrea sent me a message, asking if I wanted to go for a walk this weekend through the new park that opened near downtown, and I said yes without thinking much about it. I don't know if it's going to turn into something more. Honestly, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, but at least I'm open to the possibility of meeting someone who truly values me, who's honest, who isn't secretly planning how to replace me while sleeping in my bed and eating the food I pay for. I guess what I learned most from all this is that you can think you know someone completely and be totally wrong. 5 years of marriage, years of dating before that. And it turns out I never really knew Jessica. Or maybe she changed. I don't know. What I do know is that I deserve someone who consciously chooses me every day, not someone who's with me only until an option they consider better appears. And if that means being alone for a while I process everything and rebuild myself, that's okay. I'm at peace with that.